The narrative that ESPN has been trying to push for the last day or so about Jordan Travis's injury is completely off base, and it is completely untrue. It has nothing to do with the way that the college football playoff rankings just came out this week, and we're going to talk about that today. I know that we're all really heated about this subject, and I'm going to try and keep this pretty PG because yesterday in our live show, Richie and I did anything but keep things PG. Again, apologies for some of the language in that video. But the idea that Florida State was left out of the playoff because Jordan Travis, their best player, got hurt, something that in 10 years of college football playoffs, we've literally never seen before, despite injuries to many, many, many key people throughout all of the college football playoff history. It's just something we've never seen before. So you're telling me that Florida State is the only team to ever be impacted by injury enough to be left out. We've had 10 years of playoffs. That's 40 playoff contenders. That's probably somewhere around 50 to 55 playoff teams that could have potentially made it in, but maybe just finished just outside of those rankings. It is a narrative that became pretty prevailing, but the way that Florida State's other players, talking about Trey Benson in that Florida game and Florida State's defense in that game, and then Florida State's defensive line and even Florida State's offensive line in the Louisville game and Lawrence Toafili, the way that other players elevated their play shows that Florida State was learning how to play and play very effectively without Jordan Travis. You look at what ESPN was saying during the college football playoff show, in the fact that winning with a second-string and third-string quarterback were the most impressive feats that they'd seen, but it still wasn't enough to put them in the college football playoff. What in the world are you even talking about? But it goes back way further than that. It goes back before Jordan Travis's injury. Kirk Herbstreit told you what was going to happen before Jordan's leg even got hurt. Before Florida State fans were even upset during that North Alabama game, Kirk Herbstreit told you that morning what was going to happen. Now, I can't show you the video because ESPN, just like they stole Florida State's chances at the playoff, they'll steal this video, and so we'll play the audio. Stick with it. I'll explain some of the things that you can't see in a moment, but listen to what he says.
12 champion Texas, SEC champion Alabama, one loss, who lost to Texas, and Georgia, two-time champion, one loss. You've only got one spot. What are you going to do, Herbie?
I think under this scenario they're in, that's debatable.
Oh, you okay?
They're debatable.
Point to Florida State saying they're debatable.
They're in if they do this. They're in. See, I think they would be in because of what they did here. So I think they would be in. I think the debate would be between Alabama and undefeated Florida State.
So you're in the room.
What he was basically saying was that if Florida State is up there in the playoff, he then circles Alabama and says if they win, they're in. And then he circles Texas and says, well, because of what they did to Alabama, they would be in too. So before Jordan was even hurt, he had a playoff that looks exactly like what we have today. Georgia's out because they lost the SEC championship. The Big Ten winners in. We know that's Michigan now. Washington's up there. And Kirk told you before Jordan was hurt that he was going to take FSU out of the playoff. You don't think Kirk Herbstreit knows what's going on in those playoff committee meetings? You don't think he had any insight as to what was going to happen? You don't think ESPN's in their back pocket? I don't care what Joey Galloway tells you on TV. They absolutely care about the matchups, and they care about the rankings, and they care about those games, how they're impacted, how they're affected. Joey Galloway's full of crap, like the rest of ESPN's hosts and personalities are, outside of maybe just a couple. Shout out Berger. But Kirk told you what was going to happen on College Game Day. He literally told you 3 weeks ago. And we didn't believe it. We said, oh, no way. No way will an undefeated Florida State get left out. Absolutely no chance. But Kirk told you before Jordan Travis even lined up for pictures on senior day against North Alabama, he told you what was coming. You want to know what the BS part of this is, though? Is that for weeks we were lied to about the Jordan Travis injury. You see, Kirk told you what was going to happen. And it had nothing to do with Jordan Travis being hurt. Here's what Boo Corrigan said after the Jordan Travis injury. Now, Boo Corrigan is the chair of the College Football Playoff Committee. And when he was pressed, when Reese asked him about the injury, here's how he responded.
Impact did the injury to Jordan Travis have on the evaluation of Florida State?
Didn't have any impact. As we're watching the game,
No impact.
Florida State starts off down 13. Rodemaker comes in to the game. They score 58 consecutive points. They got a lot of dudes on the field, Reese. They got a lot of guys that can play. And, as we're looking at it, that's where we are this week. And again, anything beyond that is going to be projecting.
So no impact. It had no impact is what he said after Jordan Travis's injury. Now, that morning, Kirk told you they were out anyway. But after the injury, Tuesday night rolls around, they asked Boo Corrigan, no impact. Reese even pressed him further and asked him about it again. Are you sure that it's not having an impact? And he basically responded back and said, that's why you're not on the committee. That's why you're not part of the selection show. But obviously ESPN won in the end of the day. But at first glance, Kirk told you the injury doesn't matter because Texas and Alabama are getting it anyway. Boo Corrigan told you the injury doesn't matter because we evaluate all those other dudes. They got dudes on the field, Reese. They got dudes on the field. What did Boo Corrigan say the next week after Florida State with a backup went into the swamp and covered the spread? What did Boo say?
About Florida State, we talked a little bit about the absence of their quarterback. Jordan Travis suffered a season-ending injury. Tate Rodemaker in there now. How did the committee evaluate the Florida State team, particularly the way it played on offense against Florida Saturday night?
Yeah, different team, right? Different team without Jordan Travis. Tate Rodemaker continues to, in the game and a half that he's been playing, has done well, has kind of managed the game. Trey Benson getting 3 touchdowns during the course of that game, as we talked about last week. It's more than just one player, but obviously they're a different team without Travis.
It's more than one player. He talked about Trey Benson. He talked about Tate Rodemaker looking better over his game and a half, continuing to learn the offense. And again, it had nothing to do with Jordan Travis. So you don't believe it? You don't believe what ESPN's telling you? You don't believe what the College Football Playoff Committee is telling you? Kirk told you it had nothing to do with the injury because he said that they would be out before the injury. Boo Corrigan then went back-to-back weeks. Literally, that second one was 5 days before the rankings. It was on Tuesday night. The rankings came out on Sunday. So you're telling me that from Tuesday to Sunday, everything changed? That same night, after Boo spoke a bit, the guys were going back and forth, and Kirk Herbstreit's whiny tail was saying, we got to put Bama in, and he was crying his big old crocodile tears. He was being an absolute sissy. And Greg McElroy, shout out McElroy for having a little bit of stones for saying this, trying to keep it as PG as we can. McElroy went to FSU's defense. What did McElroy say? Play that one.
They win, they're in. We don't even need to entertain the idea of a one-loss team potentially jumping them a la Texas and Alabama. Florida State's in. They're going to take care of business this weekend. They're going to be in. They deserve to be.
We don't even need to entertain the idea of a one-loss team jumping Florida State, a la Alabama and Texas. He laid it out. He said exactly what would happen. There's no way. We are not going to see this happen. McElroy said, we don't even need to be talking about it. That was on Tuesday night. Tuesday night, McElroy was Florida State fans' biggest advocate. Florida State's football team thought, we at least have McElroy. At least he's in our corner. It's Tuesday night. We're 5 days from the rankings. We go beat Louisville, and we are in. And McElroy was saying that is what should happen. When McElroy mentioned Alabama and Texas, he was mentioning them understanding that the implication was that would be a winning Alabama and Texas. That would be an SEC winning Alabama. That would be a Big 12 winning Texas. Of course, McElroy wasn't talking if Alabama was to lose to Georgia, could they jump FSU? Of course, McElroy wasn't talking if Texas lost to Oklahoma State, they could jump FSU. His implication was no matter what, if Florida State beats Louisville and Alabama beats Georgia and then Texas beats Oklahoma State, those two teams cannot jump Florida State. We should not even entertain the idea. McElroy, 5 days later, got his marching orders from the SEC, got his marching orders from the headquarters there from the boss, from his daddy, and he completely changed his tune. He completely changed his narrative, his view on it, and everything he thought about it. Now, I've got some thoughts on this, but first, I want you to hear the clip.
The committee has said for 10 years. It's an opportunity today to practice what they preach.
Yeah.
They've been telling us for 10 years it's the 4 best teams. And right now, I think without a shadow of a doubt, Alabama is among the 4 best teams. The debate between Alabama and Florida State will rage on. And if they really want to tell us and continue to tell us it's the 4 best teams, then it should be Alabama in the 4 spot.
So in 5 days, he completely changed his tune. Alabama should be in. Now, 5 days ago, again, on Tuesday, he told you we should not even entertain the idea that a one-loss Alabama could jump Florida State. When he said that, he knew the only way Alabama would be one loss would be to beat Georgia. And yet, he made that statement on Tuesday, and by Sunday, he had his leash on. He had his leash on, and what ESPN and the SEC and everybody else who controls this, the money people, they had whipped him into submission. And he's a coward. And unless he can come out and just say, look, I was drunk on Tuesday night. I've got an alcoholism problem. I don't know what I'm talking about when I was on that first show. I was wrong. I can't believe I said that. I made a mistake. Then he's full of crap. There's no way your mind changes like that. There's no way that a 3-point loss makes a 3-point win by Alabama makes your mind completely flip there. Absolutely no chance. And even if it does, how do you justify your narrative changing from Tuesday to Saturday about Texas? How do you justify it? We should not even entertain the thought, and then he does a complete 180 turn. And it's unfortunate to see people cower behind having opinions. Booger McFarland better watch out for his job. Because the last person that spoke up and went against the narrative and the BS that ESPN and Disney and all them idiots, again, PC, push was David Pollack, and they booted his you-know-what out of town. Booger McFarland steps up and talks about how, man, I think it's because of their SEC, and they got to stick with having the most favorable matchups. And Joey Galloway starts crying his eyes out on TV. We don't care about them. Absolutely you care about the matchups. You're an entertainment company. You're a company that makes money based on ratings and the ability to sell ads. Look, you can be right. It's not about who's right and wrong, but don't lie to us. Don't tell us that you don't care about ratings. Don't tell us that you don't care about the matchups. Now, does Joey Galloway care about it? I don't know. I don't care. Does Booger McFarland, does Reese Davis? I don't know if they care. But don't act like ESPN does not care about the ratings. Don't act like Disney does not care about putting the best possible matchup that'll be the most intrigue, that'll have the most people tuned in, that'll have the most people tuned in for the longest. Don't act like they don't care about that. Don't act like ESPN and Disney don't care about protecting their biggest cash cow, and that's the SEC. And I know Florida State's an attractive brand, and I know that Florida State gets just as many eyes as anyone else in the country. But don't act like they don't protect their cash cow. Don't act like they don't protect the SEC. And to protect the SEC, they knew they couldn't break all the precedents. They knew they couldn't jump Alabama over Texas. And so what'd they do? They moved them both in and kicked Florida State out. But it had nothing to do with Jordan Travis's injury. And Kirk Herbstreit is on record saying it. Why is he on record saying it? Because he said it was going to happen before Jordan ever took a snap against North Alabama. Boo Corrigan told you for 2 straight weeks it had nothing to do with the injury. They were hoping and praying that Florida State would lose to Florida. Why do you think everybody picked Florida last week? Why do you think everybody picked Louisville this week? They were hoping and praying that Florida State would lose one of those 2 games so they didn't have to be the bad guy. If Billy Napier wasn't an idiot and doesn't throw a double reverse pass, their prayers are probably answered. Florida State falls. Florida State fans aren't upset. They understand you lost a game. You're out. That's no big deal. But Florida State escapes. They get out of the swamp. They get a win. ESPN's not happy about it. So they played the good guy card again. McElroy, we should not even entertain the idea. Kirk Herbstreit, I think Florida State fans should be happy tonight, he said 5 days ago on that Tuesday night. And Boo Corrigan lying as well, or change tune, one or the other. We don't evaluate that. It's more than just one player, he said that second time. It's more than just one guy. There's 84 other players, what we've been telling you for 2 weeks. And then they think, oh, well, Louisville will do it. Louisville was a 1-point favorite going into the game last night. At kickoff, I put money on the Noles to win. I know they were a 1-point favorite. Shout out offshore betting because you can't gamble in North Carolina. And they were hoping that Louisville would do their dirty work for them. They were hoping that Louisville would get rid of Florida State for them. They were hoping that Louisville would eliminate the Noles. And when they got word that Jordan Travis was out and Tate Rodemaker was out, you know those pansies in Bristol were celebrating. You know they were celebrating. There's no way this 18-year-old kid can lead him to a win. There's no way that Brock Glenn's going to be able to do it. And Jared Verse said, not on my watch, buddy. Braden Fisk said, not on my watch, buddy. Lawrence Toafili said, not on my watch, buddy. Ryan Fitzgerald, not on my watch, buddy. And the Noles went out and won. And it forced ESPN's hand to do what we all knew they would do. What Kirk told you they would do 2.5, 3 weeks ago. Kirk told you guys what was coming. And ESPN did it. We've got more thoughts on this. I believe that this goes way deeper. I believe there are a lot of conference implications with the ACC, the grant of rights, Florida State trying to get out of this dog crap conference. But don't let them lie to you about Jordan Travis's injury being the reason Florida State got left out, because it 100% is not. They told you before he got hurt that they were going to do this. And if it all played out the same way, they'd have done the same thing. They absolutely would have. Kirk knew 2.5 weeks ago that that's what they were going to do, and they did it. It's frustrating. It's abhorrent. It is a travesty to our sport. Thank God for the good people like Andrea Adelson, David Hale, Booger McFarland, RG3, those that work for ESPN that are willing to call this out. I do worry. I think all those people are really good people. I've actually met all 4 of them in person, spent time with a couple of them. A couple of them been on our show. I worry about their jobs. I worry about their jobs speaking up against what has happened. This was collusion. This was absolutely one of the worst things to ever happen to college football. And it's not just because I'm an FSU fan. Guys, look around. Outside of Crimson Tide fans, outside of Gator fans and Canes fans, which you understand why they're celebrating. Haven't had much else to celebrate. College football's pissed off about this. I had a couple Bulldogs fans call me today, text me today, talk about this. They don't like it either. I had 2 of them tell me, we think we should be in, but we're more upset for you. Because we lost yesterday. We get it. We blew our shot. We had an easy in. You guys were doomed from the start. Florida State wasn't getting in one way or the other. And it's frustrating. And it's sad because they all put on their pity parties. They all say, oh, man, we're so sad for Florida State. We're so upset. We feel so bad for those kids. Man, those jerks were celebrating when Jordan Travis went down. All those guys that were laughing like, oh, Florida State might get left out. Florida State, this one would be out. Kirk was pointing to Florida State on that screenshot I showed you. This one might be gone. When Jordan got hurt, they were jumping for joy. They could not be more excited that Florida State, the one they wanted to leave out, was going to end up being out. And they told you for 2.5 weeks, it's fine. We don't care about the injury. We don't care. No big deal. It's fine. Not factoring it in, hoping that the Noles would lose one of their 2 games. And the Noles refused to die. So ESPN killed them off themselves. Man, I'm telling you, there better be changes in Tallahassee with the way that ESPN is treated. There better be changes in Tallahassee about the way that ESPN is given access and covers this program. It ought to be cut off, man. And if not, then Florida State's culpable for it. Talked about that a little bit in the live show yesterday. If you missed that, go back and watch it. Hit the subscribe button. We're going to talk about this from a conference perspective. We're going to dive into this with Commissioner Phillips, the ACC, the grant of rights, how they're culpable in this as well, and what might be next for the Noles. I appreciate you guys tuned in. I'm still mad. I know you are too. Still frustrated, but I love you guys. We'll get through this together. 13-0, still 13-0. Hate the way it ended, but still appreciate you guys for all the love and support. Talk to you soon. Go Noles.